were all huddled in the house because the Klan was walking down the street in their hoods and carrying the Confederate flags.
My son would not go to the restroom. He'd hold himself together till he got home, and I don't know how he did it. He was afraid to go in the bathroom.
And he came in, he said, where's that nigga?
The coach was like, I'm the first person to ever tell you that you were black.
Name callings, hearing the N-word a number of times, getting out the street, lockers vandalized.
My mother said, please, I'll buy the glass, I'll buy the water, but she's sick. I need to give her some medication. He says, I don't give a damn about you niggas.
It didn't seem odd because I was just used to it.
That's the way it was. That was the sign of the times.
It was my norm at that time.
It is what it is.
They did what they had to do.
That's when the rage grew in me, and I said, no, this can't happen.
I knew that it had to change.
I was not going to be contented with that anymore.
I have got to prove ignorance wrong.
I told myself I have to do this or I'm going to drown.
I was fighting for the right to be.
Sometime now, it seems like we're almost going backward.
We're going back almost to an era of racial disharmony.
We cover it up a lot better. We don't address it as hopes that it will go away.
I can see it in Amarillo.
Even though you're good at what you do, you are still black.
I don't believe it'll ever be eradicated totally.
We're not being as human as we should be.
We have to be more selfless than selfish.
If you want to affect change, you affect it on a small level, and then you allow that to grow.
There's a lot of things that can be taught and shared, and we have to do that ourselves. And we haven't done as well a job as we should have.
I just wanted them to acknowledge that it happened so that we could grow from it instead of trying to push it under a rug.
We don't want to forget history, because if we forget history, it's doomed to repeat itself. This was my great-grandmother. From what my grandfather told me, she was raped. She looked white, and this was my great-grandfather, and he got in trouble a lot of times because, a lot of the whites that didn't know that she was black thought he was messing with a white woman. They had a farm there in Marshall and Jonesville, Texas. After the Civil War, a lot of the big farmers gave land and stuff to some of their former slaves and to become sharecroppers. My great-grandmother was educated, and she got tired of the sharecroppers being cheated when they took their goods, to sell, the cotton and the peanuts and so forth and so on. So she started teaching them how to read and write, so that they cannot get cheated when they took their goods to market. So this didn't go well with the local, with the local people. So what they did was the Ku Klux Klan gave them 24 hours to get off their property because they were, messing up the system by teaching people how to read and write. My great-grandmother got her shotgun and set out on her front porch and refused to be moved. She didn't. They finally had to go get her because they poisoned her well, her livestock, and she had no way to, support herself. So then her daughters came and got her and took her into Marshall. And we found out later that the property that they had was very valuable, and there were oil and gas wells on that property.
Even though we were in a black community, when we go to the town to shop or whatnot, you just could feel it. It was different.
If we were in line to pay for groceries and somebody white got ahead of us, we had to step back.
They had restrooms that just said restrooms, and then one for placard for colored only. Also water fountains. So then I thought the realization of asking my dad, what is this all about? And he explained at that time that this is the age we're living in, basically, that black individuals cannot proceed to mingle with white utilities or restrooms or fountains.
We were not allowed to try on clothes in the department stores.
I remember once I was going to ride the city bus in Plainview, and I had to sit on the back. I said, well, I won't be riding this. I'll walk.
I remember one night we were all huddled in the house because the Klan was walking down the street in their hoods and carrying the Confederate flags. And everybody had the lights off and people were scared. And I remember there was one neighbor there. We was peeping out the window and watching them and telling us, telling the adults where they were at, And I don't know who they were looking for that night, but I know that everybody in the house was terrified. And I remember they said, well, whoever they get there, probably take them over to the hanging tree. And there was a tree that I don't know if they killed anyone that night, but there was a huge big tree with a lot of moss on it that my father pointed out that was the hanging tree. That's where they hung people at.
When I was president of the NAACP, there was a family in one of these little smaller towns called me because a cross had been burned in their yard. And it was because they had dark-skinned grandchildren.
My sister got sick, and my mother had to take out the car at the Well Air Force Base, to the doctor. So we went out to the air base. I don't remember what was wrong, but the doctor gave us some medication and told her to give this to her every so often. So we got downtown and we had to wait on the bus stop. My sister began to get a temperature again and she wasn't feeling well, so my mother, it was time to give her some medication. And right there on the corner there was I call it a cafe or a juice joint or whatever, but it was still whites only, And my mother went around to the back door and asked for a glass of water. And he said, we don't serve y'all here, get on away from here. And my mother said, please, sir, may I have a glass of water for my daughter? She's sick and I need to give her some medicine. And I don't give a damn, go on, gal, get away from here. My mother said, please, I'll buy the glass, I'll buy the water, but she's sick, I need to give her some medication. He says, I don't give a damn about you, nigga. Said, if you don't get away from me, I'm gonna call the police. So we had to walk down to the Greyhound bus station, to the colored section of the restroom, to get my sister some water.
We lived in the black area.
At that time, the only world that we lived in was black.
So it was not a problem to us.
It didn't seem odd because I was just used to it.
We didn't really understand the meaning of a difference in being less than anyone else.
That's the way that was life. And that's what you did, and that was it.
We lived in our community, we didn't ever have a need to go outside of that community because, neighbors have raised you when your mom and dad was at work and so forth and so on. So everybody, it was a village at that time and everybody pitched in and helped each other. So wasn't really aware that anything was wrong.
Whatever happened, that's the way it's supposed to be.
I can't say that I had very many things that happened to me because I was black, because we lived well enough not to have to bother about some of the things.
You have to understand, at that time I was probably about 6 years old, so didn't really put it all together, but understanding that there was a difference.
That's how it was. that was the way life was.
It's amazing to me after I think back about our parents and how they not only insulated us, but ensured that we did not perceive ourselves as inferior to anyone. Even though they worked 2 and 3 jobs just to maintain a standard of living.
Ain't nothing going to change. You know, this is the way it is.
They knew it. They knew it wasn't right.
That's the way it was. That was the sign of the times.
Many of the blacks during that time, they did what they had to do.
Where I really became aware there was a difference was we were in Marshall, Texas on summer vacation, about 55 or 56. I want to say 56. And we had went out into the country on one of the farms where one of my other great grandparents lived, and on the way back into town, you know, we had to pass by Caddo Lake, you know, the lake you were talking about, and my twin brother and I took off our shirts, and we were in the back of the car, and in the back seat, my grandfather looked up and he stopped and he pulled over and says, "What are you boys doing?" I said, "What do you mean? What are we doing?" He says, "Put your shirt back on." And we said, "Why, Big Daddy?" He said, "You cannot ride around with your shirt off." And my brother and I pointed, "But look, the little white boys over there got their shirts off." He said, "You can't do what they do." And that was the first time that I guess I really had a wake-up call that things were different between black and white.
I do recall a time I went to Houston to visit with my great auntie, and we were going to ride the bus. So I just got on, sat on the bus, you know. Now there were only 3 other people on the bus, and this one person just had a fit because I didn't go to the back. And I looked around, I said, "Well, what's wrong with sitting here?" And my aunt said, "Come on, baby." I said, "No, I was 17 then. I said, I'm not going to move because this person wants me to move. The bus is empty. There's just 5 of us on the bus."
The monumental moment for me is when I was overseas and I was stationed in White Beach, Okinawa. I was in the Navy, and one of the ports of call was the Philippines. And we were stationed in, we would port off in Subic Bay, one of the largest naval bases in the world. And we would go to Liberty. We would get off our ships and go into our ports, and then we would actually have to cross over from the military side to the civilian side by crossing a bridge. And the bridge was called a Monet. I don't know if I can say some of those things on the camera, but it was called it was actually called Shit City. We would actually cross over a bridge and over to Alongapo City. And crossing that bridge, underneath the bridge was a sewer. And the natives at that time were young kids, 7, 8, 9 years old. And one of the ways that they were able to help their families and their standard of living were to dive into that sewage water, and the military people walking across would flip coins and see those young people dive into the sewage to retrieve those coins. Even coming out with $1 was a tremendous substandard upscale living. So when I saw that, it repulsed me and it really turned my stomach. And I'm saying to myself, here are we all as Americans, and we are doing that and seeing that and taking amusement out of seeing young people fighting for their standard of living by diving into that to retrieve water. So that was an awakening to me, and said, man's inhumanity to man. And I knew something like that, something had to be changed. There I saw it firsthand from a perspective of Americans that are very proud that we have a tremendous, one of the more better standards and appreciative living of anyone in the world, and we're treating individuals that like that.
And so I came back after going in the Army. I came back through here on my first furlough trip. Two friends of mine and I were riding the Greyhound bus, and we came to Amarillo, and we stopped at the Greyhound station, and they said, we got to use the wash up and everything. So the station is still down there now. I went in, had on my suits and everything, because I always dressed like I was supposed to, and I wasn't permitted to eat. This was right here on Tyler 7th and Tyler. And when we went into that place, they had a long serving line, and I got in the line because there were some other white guys with me for soldiers, and they were walking along, and this lady in the line, she looked over at me and she said, why are you in this line? She was a white lady. I said, I'm fixing to eat. I had a cantaloupe on my tray, and she said, you can't eat that in here. I said, I got to eat. She said, you see that window over there? There was a little peep window over there to the side, and there was a black lady on the other side. And she said, you see that window? So that's where you need to go. I said, okay. And I hated to go there. I hated to go so bad.
I think the thing that woke me up the most, I was a senior in government class, in Miss Ann Preston's class, I'll never forget. And we were watching Mississippi Burning. And one of the students in the class raised his hand and he said, is this real? Is this real? And she stood up from her desk and she looked around the whole room and she said, nope, that wasn't real. That was all fabricated. It couldn't have been that bad. And at that point, I was like, that's gonna be my mission in life. I have got to prove ignorance wrong.
I was not going to be contented with that anymore.
And I guess that's when the rage grew in me, and I said, no, this can't happen. This shouldn't be.
I knew that it had to change, but I just didn't know when. But I just knew that it had to change.
Just wanted to be something. Just wanted to me, myself, because I wanted to be different.
But it was young people, you know, and we were the ones that were, you know, that were tired of it.
I owed it to the people that came before me to do my best and to excel in every arena.
We knew that right then and there that we were setting an example for those that were going to come behind it.
I told myself I have to do this or I'm going to drown. I have to absorb myself into doing things for the community, keeping myself as active as I could, or I would, I would just be wasted.
I'm going to do better than that. I knew I was going to do better.
I knew I was a good basketball player. I knew I was a good photographer. I knew I was a great photographer. Nobody was going to tell me that I wasn't. Nobody was going to tell me that I couldn't be that.
And I believe I can do it. So I had that confidence in myself.
The Amarillo Independent School District desegregated in 1967 officially. I think probably a year before that, but wholesale in '67. I was a 9th grader getting ready to go to high school, looking forward to going to high school at Carver. This is what we all kind of grew up desiring, and seeing our older siblings go through all the different programs and different associations and athletics and playing for one of the renowned coaches in the state of Texas. We're looking forward to that. And then it was informed in 1966 that in 1967 the schools being desegregated, and we would be going then to desegregate the other schools within the district.
We were the only two African Americans on the basketball team.
Felt hurt, felt betrayed that we will be afforded the opportunity of continuing in our not only our educational prowess but also our athletic abilities, and playing for only Coach Allen, but also just continuing in our academic area throughout our school. The teachers took a tremendous connectivity to our students, and you can look at the annals now of history and see where they were, and they are, extremely talented and professional individuals that graduated from Carver that have had tremendous success and that are having tremendous success throughout this country now. So we weren't lacking in that ability, even though we were lacking in the tools, the books, the equipment and things that were garnered to us. They made sure that we had everything that we continually needed as much as they could out of their own pockets most of the time to ensure that we were well-rounded.
And I remember quite a few times Holiday Inn not letting us stay there with the rest of the team. And there were times that we had to go to like Sherman, Texas, if I remember correctly. We had to find a family to stay with, and then we had to meet up with the team. And even like going to the restaurants, the same thing. Those that would let us eat would put us in the back where nobody could see us, and it was a difficult time.
There were many altercations in our first probably couple of years, at least the first year that we transferred to the different high schools in the city, and we made it known in a physical and verbal manner that we were not very well pleased with it. And then we felt that we weren't received well from those schools. We were not only from the students, but also from the staff of those schools. So, the sensibility of understanding that, we're not very welcome with open arms in these institutions.
I want to be a photographer. And the kids said, it ain't no photographers. What they were saying was that there weren't black photographers. And
name callings, hearing the N-word a number of times, getting our street, lockers vandalized, and just the gathering of individuals and forming around you and sharing their displeasure about you being in their schools. Go back to where you came from, and buses being rocked and cars being vandalized, and any number of things for the first few weeks. And then, of course, we didn't take it lying down. We confronted, and we showed that we could carry our own as well weight, and so we showed a lot of displeasure as well.
And we played towns that had not integrated. Paris, Texas, Greenville, Texas, Rutherford, Texas, and that was interesting because we go to those towns and we're the only two blacks there, and they voiced their opinion. They'd call out names and so forth and so on.
It was a culture shock coming back. I was born and raised here, but after going away in the military and the OU and then Austin and coming back to Amarillo, it was a culture shock for me. So I knew I had to get into doing something, or I probably wouldn't, as I so myself, wouldn't survive. So I delved into community work.
It was very difficult. A lot of times I found myself as the only black girl in the room or in the class, or, you know, people didn't understand all the time.
And my grandmother said, wow, Floyd, just think. You can get you a job working for a rich white family or working in a big hotel. I said, I don't want to cook for no white family or cook in no hotel, you know. She said, well, what you going to do? I said, I'm going to be a photographer. And I remember saying, okay, baby, pass me that sugar over there, you know, and she just kind of, you know, blew it off.
I think the most awkward point is when we're talking about slavery and things have to be said and everybody is looking at you like, you know, are you mad about that? What are you going to say about that? I think that was the most uncomfortable thing, because I knew whenever that conversation was coming, I'd tell my mom, well, we're talking about slavery today, so you know what that means.
My son would not go to the restroom. He'd hold himself together till he got home, and I don't know how he did it. He was afraid to go in the bathroom because of the way the kids were treated.
It was day and night. The culture and the aspirations and the malaise, the inactivity of a progressive nature, not only within the black community, but in the white community as well. It's just like it was like it was standing still coming from Austin.
They would always say things like, well, it wasn't me, I didn't do it. And I never wanted them to feel like I was blaming them. I just wanted them to acknowledge that it happened so that we could grow from it instead of trying to push it under a rug.
There wasn't a lot of advocacy back then of those individuals wanting to be the next Martin Luther King Jr. or anything of that nature. We knew that we had to stick together and work harder to achieve our goals and aspirations, and then we would be able to ensure and make that a difference as we move further in our lifespan.
As an adult, though, looking back on it now, I can see what the injustice was. But then, I mean, it was just my norm. It was how we got to school, and we had to go across town to school because that was the district that we were in. And, you know, to us, it wasn't any different. You know, they would say, well, we're going to get you there early and you can go and eat breakfast and all this other stuff. But then you have other kids whose parents are dropping them off, or they live close to the school and they're, you know, getting an hour extra sleep and things like that. It's just different.
This was the 60s. This was the age of protest. It's some of love and everything. And I knew that I wouldn't settle for anything less than being respected as a man. That was not a doubt in my mind. You know, I came back as Mr. Anthony. I had accomplished a lot of things in the military. I made rank real good, and I had seen other parts of the world.
People get tired. People don't care. People say, you know, it's not going to get any better. Why should I? And I think that type of that apathetic, I don't care, you know, has, and I think it's just kind of taken over.
I went to Europe as a boy, but I came back as a man.
Racism was out there, but it wasn't something that they would allow, that we should allow to keep us from doing what we wanted to do.
I came back. I knew that I wanted to make it better. Not only for me, but if I ever got married, I was single at the time, for my family.
I can remember I got on the speech team, and it was the big thing is that the coach was like, I'm the first person to ever tell you that you were black. And I'm like, no. But that became the running joke, and even now when I see her, she'll still say stuff like that, and I'm like, that's just ignorant.
Many would say, well, you think you're white. I think you think you're white. That's the way they talk. Yeah, no, I don't. That's just.
I didn't act like normal black people, so just let me remind you that, you know, even though you're good at what you do, you are still black.
what was most hurtful is people calling you niggers when you go out on the basketball court. You walk out there and they just hurtle insults and stuff at you, you know, and just belittle you, you know, and you, that was something nobody else could share with you.
I had definitely felt it. I mean, I've been called a nigger. I mean, things like that just happen.
And he would use the term, many of them, those nigger children, those nigger teachers. He really wanted to say something else, but they would use a term as close to it to keep from saying it as possible. We knew it. I knew what he wanted to say.
That people say, you know, well, it's different because I don't use the ER, I put an A on the end of it, you know, that does not matter, you know, like it's still the history of the word. And I think a lot of times people are like, well, if I use that word, then, you know, then it won't have as much power when somebody else uses it, or I'll teach them how to use it. But in reality, I mean, it still means the same thing, you know, it's the same thing on the inside of the package, no matter how you package it.
When they integrated the schools, they would send me to different white schools. I took my kids. My first job was at Lamar. And I told the principal I wanted to bring my kids. He said, they can come.
They were having some demonstrations downtown. They were going to do this. They were going, and so I started tagging along. By this time, I was up in my, you know, in my early teens. And I remember they would be downtown protesting. I'd find my way down there. It'd be a bunch of us young people. You know, we were going down there to protest.
I was well aware of it. I didn't want to be a part of it, but automatically I was a part of it.
I had been asked to work with the kids, so I asked them, were there any black kids? And they said, well, no. I said, well, I will if we do. And they said, okay. So 2 or 3 of the other ladies got with me. They were all right. And we got some black kids together and whatnot. And so that's how they got started. Because they wanted me to work there, but I wanted to make sure that we had some black kids there.
They had a picket line going out there, so I got in there and I was excited.
I called a 2nd grade teacher of mine, Amarillo White, and I went to her, and then I told her what I wanted to do, and what I wanted to do was to bring Juneteenth back to Amarillo, and I asked her to see if she could help me, and she said, of course, and at that time she introduced me to another citizen here, and then we formulated and brought the first Juneteenth back.
When she found out I was at some of these demonstrations and so forth, she was more afraid for me, for one, for my life, and 2, losing her job. She worked as a domestic, you know, in a private home, and for her employer to think that we were rebel rousers and starting some trouble, she could lose her job.
We convened at the Fellowship Hall of New Hope Baptist Church on one Saturday morning, a group of us, and formulated, came up with the name of the Amarillo United Citizen Forum, and started drafting the bylaws.
And I was teaching the kids how to use the library. And I had a little girl to go downtown to the library. She was in the 4th grade, and they wanted to know, where you go to school? And because they didn't think she was supposed to know how to use it. She told me I go to Carver, North High State was called. So they said, well, how you know how to use a library? She said, my teacher. Well, you don't have a library, how can she teach you? But she still taught me how to use the library. And she just felt so bad because she knew how to use the library and they didn't want to let her use it. So we kept working on that until we finally got it so that they could go and use the library without a lot of questions. If they know how, why not?
What we could do to build the communities, what we could do to have different venues for our youth to play, to engage, to gather, what we could do for the educations of those that were having difficulties in education and tutorial, what we could do for senior citizens, what we could do for all aspects of the community, of working together to build our communities and have activities and things available for all individuals to take part in. And then where those students would be graduating, they would want to stay here or come back to help build this community for their relatives or their friends, and ensure that Amarillo would be productive for all citizens, regardless of their makeup or how they their religion.
I didn't believe in kids treating others different, and they knew it.
They said, I don't like that. I said, well, if you don't like it, what would you do? Well, I just leave it alone. I said, then why don't you do people like that? If you feel like you don't like them, don't mess with them to cause things. Just stay to yourself and just watch. You might find that they do some of the same thing that you do, and you might, can get along. They said, oh.
Anytime that you use any racial slurs, you're gonna get punished.
My plan was that if they try and we're gonna try and take me off the bar stool at the counter, it was one of those swivel seats, so I grabbed up under the side and just held on real tight, just in case, I got put up. But, you had some hecklers that came in there, but then they shut the restaurant down, and nobody got served.
I have been in the fight since I was like in 9th grade, I joined the NAACP youth chapter and I did ACTSO. I did all of those things because I wanted a better way for myself.
But I started working on political campaigns.
He knew that he's gonna be punished and he didn't want to punish, so he climbed out my window. And outside my window was one of these rose bushes, and he fell in that bush. And he didn't come back in, he took off and went home. And he told his dad, and his dad came up there immediately. And when he got there, if you've been to Travis, when he walked into the hallway. I had some other teachers sitting there and some kids sitting there. And he came in, he said, where's that nigger? Where's that nigger? I could hear it, but I didn't want to hear it. And so I walked out of my office and walked out in front of him, and he was saying this in front of all these others. He said, look here, nigga. You're not gonna touch the kid of mine. And damn it, he went on using all bad language and nigger this and nigger this and nigger this. I said, I'll tell you what. You can call me that name and everything, but don't put your finger in my face. Well, I said, no, don't put your finger in my face if you want to call me another name. So he settled for that and left because we got the police and they picked him up and he was fine and everything. But the kids that were sitting there, they asked me later, said, Miss Wilson, did you hear what he called you? I said, yeah, I heard it. The teacher was sitting there and said, but you didn't do nothing. I said, yeah, that's all right. That's all right. He's not going to call me that anymore. I said, yeah, but do you know what he called you? I said, yeah, but I feel sorry for him. It's just, if I had acted like a nigger, then that would have been different. But I'm not that, and I gotta prove it. You gotta be the best you can be at all times.
I was fighting for the right to be. I was fighting for the right to be my own man. To me, a lot of people think when we were fighting for integration, we wanted to have everything that the white man has. The only thing that I ever wanted was, when I was fighting for integration, was to be able to walk into a restaurant and eat like I could in Europe. To be able to live in a community that I could afford to live in. Be able to shop where I wanted to shop. Be able to go to college or to school where I wanted to without being told I couldn't go there. That was what, that's what it meant, that's what it meant to me.
The athletic programs escalated tremendously after the first year or two.
We wanted to rename a street in Amarillo. I was one that was over that. And I had people here, and we have had turnouts, and we had turnouts on that.
It felt good because you saw that we were bringing communities together, individuals together. I've often said, and I'll say it today, that that is one time of the year that the African American community comes together in one unified effort and voice.
Became photographers in the Air Force.
I tried to show them that every other city that's as large as Amarillo has a Martin Luther King street or boulevard or something. So what they did, in order to try to shut the blacks up, they said, well, the street needs to be on the black side. And so they got together and they named it 24th Street. Now, they didn't change it. They just designated it. So that's what I had to tell some of the people when we were going forward. It's only designated. It's not named.
They would tell me about some of the things that I did and the way I did it and how much that helped them. And I did have some letters from some of the parents thanking me for the way that I handled things with their children.
My job took me all over Europe, Northern Africa, and the Middle East as part of radar evaluation.
I felt that by bringing individuals together, if you could convene around one source, one nucleus of an event, and then be able to share it and broaden the scope of what we can do as a community, or what we can do as individuals, what we can do as families, to not only unite but to build from that source, and you know, that it could be broadened throughout the year.
You were treated as a person. They never looked at my color. They always saw me as a man, first of all, and it wasn't no boy, it wasn't no this, it wasn't no nigga. It was always as a man. I had an opportunity to go to places like London and Berlin and Madrid and almost all over Europe, you know, Libya and Africa, you know, Amman, Jordan. I went to Beirut back before all the trouble started over there, and I was always respected as a man.
But had a lot of individuals and families working together, excited about a lot of things that we were doing.
Well, when I talk about it, I think that, but maybe I did do something. But I was just being me. So, yeah.
When you saw senior citizens working in their kitchens and doing what they could do to help with meals when we were having different events, when you saw them sharing of their experience and their expertise, when you're having young people coming together to share in the resilience and the activities of what they could do, and you had professionals giving of their talents and their skills, everyone working together for the shared holistic view of for the good of the community. Yeah, it was good.
I remember years later when I started working at the TV station, my grandmother came up from Marshall for something to visit, and I took her to my job and showed her where I worked at, and she had this big smile on her face, says, "You got your white man's job." And she was very proud.
There were some teachers, there were some administrators that were very good and tried and went out of their way to show that we were welcome, and did a number of things. I could name a number of individuals and staff that really wanted to go out of the way to show that we were appreciated. But it was difficult times, and certainly as being youth, and we were not wanting to hear a lot of that.
Everybody called him Coach Red. And he was wonderful in the sense that whenever we went to a town, he would always say, "Well, let me go in there and see if they got room for all of us." You know, so I knew what he meant, you know, but a lot of the white guys didn't, you know, it didn't register them. You know, just, well, they might not have enough room, but that wasn't what he was saying.
Without faith, I don't know where I would be.
Wherever I went, I could envision my father.
I had an aunt who was a teacher, and she's one of those that would always brag on me, as they said, bragging. She would compliment me because she was a teacher, and she thought that from my discipline, I guess, that it appeared that I could be something.
Any trial or any hardship that I incurred, I would always envision and see my father, because even though he didn't have a 6th grade education, but he worked tremendously hard and was proud of his family, and we were all very proud of him. That just bowed me up to know that, hey, I can do this. Any hardship or any accomplishment, I could get through, and I would envision his picture and his words and just seeing him.
I am a believer in God, and I say that there's nothing that he will bring you to that he won't bring you through.
Friends. My oldest and best friend from high school today, we're still the best of friends. He was on the basketball team, Hispanic, Frank Alvarado, and he asked that he didn't have a locker, you know, and he was in ROTC program, and he says, "Can I keep my uniform in your locker?" Because none of the white guys would let him put his uniform in their locker. "No, I don't want that ROTC uniform in my locker. No, I don't want this in my locker." So he asked me if he could put it, you know, in my locker, and I said, yeah. So we hit it off from then on, you know, and then more friends came along, and that made it easier.
My dad instilled some of that in us, in that he didn't finish the 3rd grade, but he wanted you to go to school. You go to school, boy. You don't miss. You don't stay here and miss school. You got to go to school. And my mother was encouraging too.
That's not going to be me, you know, because my mom, she would talk to us about it blatantly, like, no, it's not going to be you, you know. You're not going to be that statistic. You're not going to do those things.
We didn't share a lot of words of love, that I love you and all these different things on a typical daily or weekly basis, but that would share that he knew that, and that I loved him, and extremely proud of him. As proud of any man I've ever known in my life.
It sounds like he was a moving force in your life.
You may get more emotional as you get older.
Just seemed like something was coming back in Amarillo.
Some things like what things?
Kind of division, race line.
We're going back almost to an era of racial disharmony.
I see that more and more. It's going back to when I was coming up. They felt that was their right. They can say to you what they want to say to you and do what they want to do. It's because of the atmosphere that's being generated, today.
Hatred is so easy. It takes one parent to have one interaction with their kid, and that kid take that and spew it to the school. And they may just get one or two people out of it, but they got those one or two. So what are they going to do with that? It's kind of like a cancer. Starts off small, and then it's able to just kind of eat away at the big part of it.
She said, "Papa, why do I have to choose?" I said, "Choose?" And I wasn't paying too much attention. What do you mean choose? She said, "Well, I'm not black because my mother is white." And says, "I'm not white because my dad is black." And she said, "And I'm not an other." So she said, "Why do I have to choose?" I said, "Huh?" She said, "Why do I have to choose? Why can't I just be me?" I said, "Go ahead, sweetheart. You just be you. If anybody said anything, you tell them your papa said you could be you." And that was all she wanted. That's all everybody wants. I just want to be me. That's all I want. I just want to be. And that's what everybody wants in this world, in this country. And until we realize that we all have a right to be, it's going to be a long time before we see a lot of complete change.
I'm the chair of the diversity committee here. And so we've had different situations where we send out emails and we get a little bit of hate literature back saying, don't bother me with this anymore. I can't understand why y'all are doing this, or this is stupid.
I received a complaint for a young man that worked at a local business here in Amarillo. This happened to him on July 27, 2018. He came back from break, went to his workstation, and that was hanging in his office by his desk.
Here in Amarillo?
Yes, July 27th.
I think that there are real issues that have to be addressed, and they make us feel uncomfortable. And we would like to say, well, let's blame it on this or let's blame it on that, but the truth is that these issues, they're real.
What I see most, there is no sensitivity anymore.
I can see it. I can see it in Amarillo sometime, but it's not much. It's not just so open.
I think they have other things that are more pressing. It's kind of like race, that's old, like we've hated people for that for years. Let's find something else that we can focus on to tear people down by.
I think it's something else, and they're using it as race, on the races.
We cover it up a lot better. We don't address it in hopes that it will go away. We've masked it under different targeted populations where no longer do I hate you just because you're black. I hate you because you're gay and black, or, I hate you because you're this and black. I think they try and tone down the black thing by hating with other things, but I think it's still the foundation.
The only thing I can say, hey, just keep your head up. You still got a lot of crazy people out there.
I don't know. I don't believe it'll ever be eradicated totally. I don't believe it will, because people are born with their differences.
It's good for me to be in a group of people like me, but for me to interact with somebody who's totally different from me, I'm growing from that interaction. And people don't like to grow, because if I grow, then I have to acknowledge. And if I have to acknowledge, then I have to change. And if I have to change, I don't really want to, it's not really me.
Well, for many I say, my people are the blacks. Many have gone such a long ways. They've gone so far until it looks like it's unreal.
We've made strides. There are more professional African Americans now than there were in the 50s, 60s. There are more that are being educated. There are more that have more resources economically. You can see that with the homes, their resources, what they own. You see more building as far as being able to live wherever they want to, pretty much. And so that has certainly benefited the community. Unfortunately, we don't see a lot of any growth and entrepreneurship as it was during the 50s and 60s.
Do you have the illusion of equal opportunity?
When Obama was chosen in there, he started crying. He was crying. He was looking at where we have come from. I can't believe it, he's saying. No, this isn't real. It's not real. I know he's now the president, but no, that's not real. It's not. He has gotten to be on top, the leader. He can't be because he was raised to drink black water. You know, he had a different bathroom. It can't be him, it can't be right, you know.
I saw the whole family line up, and I looked from the oldest grandchild to the young. I said, we're going to be all right.
I think holistically, there is a want to do better.
I am almost satisfied.
Really?
Yeah. Because, you know, life is not that long. And one should do the best he or she can do while they can do it. Make sure it's the best you can do. If you can do the best you can while you can, do it.
You have to have a lift. You have to have a goal. You have to have an ethic to work hard to achieve things. And sometimes it almost to the degree of you have to do it or else. It's not that way anymore.
That first impression of a black man in this country is the cap pulled on that side, sagging pants, tennis shoes, and gold chain. So they want to be cool, so they do the same thing.
They don't feel that they're worthy of being here or of going to school or of being successful, of overcoming obstacles. And so in feeling not worthy, they would rather just stay in that instead of rising above it.
What can you teach a child about values when you don't have them yourself?
During the 50s and 60s, there was no choice. You had to survive, to succeed. So everyone worked together and pitched in, and were able to achieve much more successes. Nowadays, it's not as much anymore.
It seems like we're just getting caught up more in sin.
It's about bonding together, and we don't bond as well as we used to. We have a way of not trusting as much as we did back then.
The generation that we're dealing with right now, their parents are a lot younger, and so it's hard to teach a kid self-worth if you're going on your own journey of self-worth, you know?
It's about respecting yourself. I think that's what we were taught. We were taught during all this time, the struggle that we had was to respect ourselves, respect who you are. My grandparents, no matter how they suffer, always have respect for who you are. You got to have a sense of values, because they don't mean that you have to give up on yours. And that's what we're not teaching our kids anymore.
Nowadays, why are you doing this? More questioning atmosphere, or you didn't do it back then, or I mean, there's a lack of trust, I think, on many sides now.
It's just something about sometimes the way things are handled and delivered. It seems like it's more manly than godly.
And again, that's not necessarily all their fault. It's ours for not sharing that, and instilling in them why they have attained what they have on the backs of their ancestors, but also what their ancestors brought to them, and instilling in them that drive, that ambition, that desire of you can be anything you want to be, but we all have to work together to achieve success.
Seems like we might think too much of ourselves. We're not being as human as we should be.
I'm getting mine, and you don't have a right to get yours. And we've lost the atmosphere of harmony between races, between cultures, and we're fighting now to maintain an existence instead of we're all working together in harmony for everyone to achieve that on that high tide, if you would. And that's hurting us.
A village raised me. You know, like my parents were my foundation, my family, but the people in the community who believed in me and trusted me and mentored me and put me in situations that I was so uncomfortable in, but I grew from, we don't have that anymore.
We are so selfish, self-centered. It doesn't matter as long as, but I can't see anyone being happy being that kind of person.
It's the new norm. I'm not worried about you and yours. You get yours and I'm gonna get mine, and at the end of the day, we'll both have it. But it doesn't work that way, because it should be us working together to get ours and then making sure somebody else gets theirs.
We've become a self-centered society.
Hatred is so ingrained into who we are as a culture, as a society. I mean, it's gonna take some tremendous ground in order to overcome that.
Part of it's social, part of it's racial. But I think if you put it all in a pot, you mix it, it all comes out that we're all here by experiment. And the experiment, you will blessed to be part of it. And don't try to snuff it out and try to prevent others from sharing it as well.
First of all, they need to respect themselves, have a respect for themselves.
We all got flesh and blood.
I think we raise a generation of educated and informed kids, and we teach them about diversity and inclusion, and we don't teach them about people's differences, we teach them about their similarities, and then we allow them to grow based on those differences.
We're all human, and we all have something alike. Let's work on that. And then if the differences are bad, let's work on that so we can come to an agreement of how we can handle this difference.
We have a lack of meeting of the mind. Being Republican, Democrat, male or female, we have a lack of meeting of the minds.
I don't have to just like everything about you, but I don't have to be mean to you.
I'm not in this world to live up to your expectations, nor are you in this world to live up to mine. But if our minds should happen to meet, then that's beautiful. A meeting of the minds. That's what we need.
If you want to affect change, you affect it on a small level, and then you allow that to grow. And it will, even if it doesn't feel like it, it will.
We need to come together again as a family And if each family would put forth the effort that they need with their children, then all the children would have some of the same things to touch and hold on to. But if you're over there and I'm over here, I don't want my kids to play with your kids. You don't want your kids to play. So we're going to we're just going to keep, they won't be able to catch anything.
You say, oh, well, that's just one family, but that's one family that you didn't have before. And that one family goes and gets a family. So now you have two. Now these two families go get a couple more families. And the next thing you know, we have a whole neighborhood of people who are embracing each other and celebrating our differences instead of shunning people because of them.
We have to be more selfless than selfish.
It starts with like each person doing their work, you know, like each parent figuring out, you know, I want my kids to be better than I was. So you have to figure out what that looks like.
America is an experiment that is still continuing, but without question, it's the greatest experiment in the history of mankind. But we can mess it up if we continue to allow fear to inject itself into us, that we hold on to our whatever we've garnered so close to our chest that we don't share it.
We have to be concerned about what impression we make on people. And if we're doing something that's bad, make somebody act bad, but then we need to say to yourself, now what can I do to kind of change this so that this would not cause this person to, you know. Have to think about more than just ourselves, what makes us complete. I think sometimes what I'm doing might not be good for somebody else.
What can you do to make it better? Don't worry about what they're doing on the other side of town. What can you do? And everything that you attempt to do, try to make it the best you can do.
In Amarillo, even right now, we have these pockets of all these people that are doing really, really good things. And my thing for everything I do in the community, let's come together.
We can refrain and hold it and so tight and squeeze it that we can ruin it.
If you happen not to be what you would like to be, work like hell to try to get to be that.
Make sure that you are right. You don't have to do anything wrong, even though you might be wronged. But stay right and stay in prayer.
Know who you are, where you come from, what you're all about.
There's a lot of things that can be taught and shared, and we have to do that ourselves, and we haven't done as well a job as we should have.
We don't want to forget history, because if we forget history, you know, it's doomed to repeat itself. History should be a learning process.
Empires have been ruined by not from without, but from within. So we can always be our worst enemies.